This is Parahan, and you are listening to the Parahan Show. We're going to jump right into things today and talk about cryptocurrencies. It's the biggest rave, everybody's buying into it, but Parahan says not so fast. I'm not completely sold on these cryptocurrencies. In fact, I don't think it's going to be the future. I think this is a fad. I think that people are taking a big financial risk, and I think that they should hold off on this because the problem is there's no clear leadership, okay? No one's taken initiative and tried to move one of these crypto coins forward and got behind it and sort of supported it, okay? We thought Elon Musk was doing that. He was doing that with Bitcoin, right? Well, he backs out of Bitcoin. Now he's going to Ethereum and Dogecoin. He's going back and forth between these various cryptocurrencies, right? And there's been no spokesperson. There's been no one to kind of take charge and push this forward into the future and say, how do we get, this, Bitcoin, let's say, to be an actual accepted currency, okay? I think in the future, it's not going to be cryptocurrency. I think it's going to be, there's going to be one centralized currency, and it's going to be used worldwide, and it's going to be digital, but I think that it's going to be accessible by a chip that would be implanted inside you. But the other issues I have with cryptocurrency, and this is kind of what makes me nervous, is that what happens when the Bitcoin exchange becomes insolvent, okay? What happens if these cryptocurrency exchanges, right? What if they can't honor their financial obligation? What if they fold, okay? And now they can't give you your money that you've invested in there. The best way to describe it is, what if you loan a friend $1,000 who says, I can triple that money, okay? And then he takes off with that money, spends it somewhere else. Now he's broke. You want that money back. You can't get it back, okay? Now, it'd be a little different if that friend had said, here is something with $1,000 value. If you don't get your money back, you get to keep it. There's no security there, and there's nothing to ensure that you won't lose all your money, And also, these like I said, because there is no clear leadership, the prices of these cryptocurrencies are bouncing all over the place, okay? They're dropping and going up high and then dropping. And so it's very hard to forecast the future of any of these cryptocurrencies because of the fads that are going on with it and because there is no clear leadership. So I think personally, you should stay away from this financially. I still think gold is the best option because gold is always going to increase in value. You have something backing it, and even if paper currency or digital currency becomes invalid, gold will still be will still be worth something, okay? It will still be valuable. It will still be a good form of currency in the chances that paper currency or digital currency went invalid. So I still think gold is probably the best investment because there's something backing it. You have that reassurance. You loan that friend $1,000 and he gives you an item worth $1,000. If he doesn't return with that $1,000, you still have that $1,000 there, right? You have something backing it, and I think that that's why gold is a very good investment on something physical. But don't listen to me specifically because I'm not a financial advisor. This is just how I feel personally, my personal opinion. But it'll be interesting to see what happens with cryptocurrency. But I think it's fad. I think it's going to fade out. I think it can't be successful because there's no clear leadership. And you have too many of these different cryptocurrencies. And I think there's a lot of transparency. People don't really know what cryptocurrency is. They just hear that people are saying they're making a lot of money off it, and they think, hey, I can make a lot of money off it. But they don't understand economics and they don't understand, you know, how cryptocurrency works, but they're just putting a lot of money into it, taking big risk, and I think is very dangerous, and you have to be very careful with that. You don't just become a day trader overnight. You need some background in economics. You need to understand how the economy works and how trading and stock and things like that work. Okay? So I guess my advice is to just be very careful with it, because I don't think it's going to be successful. My next topic is something I would like to talk about is the whole Logan Paul Floyd Mayweather fight. I'm very disappointed in boxing in a whole. I remember watching Tyson versus Evander Holyfield on TV. And I remember when boxing was really awesome, and it was a really competitive sport, but it's lost that competitive nature because of money, right? And because of the rules of these boxing associations. I think because of what's going on, you have these boxers who don't really care if they win or lose a fight, because they're still going to get paid. There's no incentive there for them to compete. I think they need an incentive-based pay, winner take all, right? And that's going to make them more competitive. When you have a boxing match like Mayweather and Paul, where there was no winners, okay, everybody's walking away with a purse. So, they're not going to compete. And even, you listen to the Mayweather interview, he's basically saying, this is fun. I don't really care because I'm walking away with money. That was his big message, is like, I'm not even trying. I don't really care because I'm walking away with money, and all he cared about was basically, I'm just going to hold him 8 rounds. It wasn't a real fight, It was just, there was no competitiveness. You could clearly see that Mayweather could have and should have won that fight. Okay, he probably could have ended it in 2 or 3 rounds, but he was just sort of holding the fight. He wasn't really fighting. He was pulling back and just letting it go 8 rounds to give the people a show. And I think no one wants to watch any competitive sport where there's no competition. Imagine a football team where they did horrible. The next year they're not going to reward and compensate these players if they played horribly and they did bad. And that's why what they should do in boxing, make them compete, make them earn their money, okay? If they're going to make these large amounts of money, right, they should have to compete. And the winner takes all, okay, and the loser walks away with nothing. It's just as easy as that. And then you will see competition, because you have 2 guys that are fighting for the purse, for the championship, okay? They're trying to win that money. So, of course, they're going to compete. They're going to fight. They're going to try their hardest. And you're not going to get these matches where you have 2 guys who don't really care about the fight, don't care win or lose. I think it's the same thing with Ben Askren and his brother Jake Paul, right? He when you look at that fight, okay, it looked like Ben Askren clearly didn't care. He's retired. He's just looking to make some money, and he gets knocked down in the first 20, 30 seconds in the first round. That's because he didn't care. To him it wasn't a big deal. And I don't think they're actually training for these fights. I don't think they're wanting to compete. Right now, anybody that's boxing is just trying to go out there and make a bunch of money, win or lose. They don't really care. It's more about instead of winning, it's become more about trying to land a match with a popular celebrity or fighter who can bring in a big purse, and you're both going to win. And I think they're becoming too much like friends. Like, hey man, let's do this fight. It's going to produce a lot of money, and all these people are going to be suckers and are going to pay for the fight. We're going to get this huge purse. Who cares if we win or lose? Who cares about your record? Who cares about fighting for glory? We're going to be rich. So money's really kind of ruined the sport of boxing and took the competitiveness away. And I think they need to bring in a system to where if a boxer wants to take home the purse, not both boxers win, regardless, get money. Okay, they have to actually win the match, and there would be other certain incentives, like if you get a knockdown in the first round or a KO in the match, in any of the rounds, you would get more money. If you win, in specific ways, then there's all these incentives to get more pay. But if you lose, you go basically home with nothing. And I think that's a good incentive. And I think for the fighters, I think they would like that because, when you think about it, the fighters are splitting this purse, win or lose, let's say 100 million, okay? 50 apiece, or maybe sometimes there's like 40-60. Loser gets 40, winner gets 60, but that's still a lot of money, okay? Now imagine if you're a fighter and you could win 100 million, all that money goes to you. You're going to compete, you're going to go out there and fight. So I think we really have to change the whole system of how boxing is done to make it more competitive. Otherwise, you're just going to have these sham fights, and there's going to be no more competing. It's just going to be all about money. I think, as a fan, we need to support and say, look, we're not going to pay for these $50 pay-per-view matches. We're not going to watch until you come up with a system that's fair and allows for competitiveness. It allows for people to compete and allows for actual fights to happen. So I really think that needs to change. Talked about a lot of current events. Let's get to the paranormal. I find it very interesting that, you have this Floyd Mayweather fight just a couple days after this big announcement that there are no extraterrestrials out there. That they are seeing UFOs, but they're probably not extraterrestrials. Like I said, they've been investigating UFOs for 70, 80 years. We knew this for a very long time. This is nothing new. All these people getting excited about it, it means nothing. They're never going to admit that these are extraterrestrial craft. They're not going to admit that these are something from another galaxy, planet, dimension. It's always going to be natural explanations, or we don't know. It's going to be shrugging our shoulders. We don't know what's going on. We see something too, but we can't explain it. They're never going to give you the full answer. And people need to understand that this is they don't want us to know about the extraterrestrials. Even if they knew, they wouldn't tell us because of the panic, because of how people would react, because of how it would affect society in a whole. And they're keeping this secret from us, and they don't want to tell us, and they never will tell us. And I think it was wrong of us to just get our hopes up and think, hey, they're going to tell us about extraterrestrials today. And that's not the case. They wanted to address this matter because a lot of people were getting interested in UFOs and saying, hey, we're actually seeing something. There's a lot of evidence here. Give us some answers. And this whole report was basically like, okay, we're going to look into it because we're seeing something too. We concur, but we found there's nothing unusual. We can't say this is extraterrestrial. It's the same thing they've been doing for years and years and years. Project Blue Book, going back to the start of these UFO investigations with Project Blue Book. It was the same exact thing. They tried to find natural explanations or just give a reasoning that we can't really make out what this is. But I don't think there ever will be disclosure. Everybody thinks, soon as there's going to be disclosure, they're going to admit to extraterrestrials. No, they won't ever admit. And I think, too, we're looking in the wrong direction. We're investigating these lights in the sky. We should be looking into these reports where people have actually had close encounters of the fourth and fifth kind, where people have experienced extraterrestrials up close, and this gives it verification that they're not just UFOs, they are connected with extraterrestrials. The Falcon Lake incident, I've said this before, Roswell, you have the Cash Landrum, Kecksburg, Pennsylvania. you have all these encounters where they actually encountered extraterrestrial beings, or these crafts had writing on them that were not from this world. There was all this trace evidence that no one is looked into, no one is given credibility. Yet, I think our biggest problem and our biggest concern is lights in the sky and aliens being connected to ancient civilizations. But we need current evidence to back up these claims that these UFOs are connected to extraterrestrials. And that will give us the disclosure that we need. So, with my, I want to move on from that and talk about, people always ask me, do you have a list of haunted locations that you think would potentially, that you would recommend to visit, where you would have a potential paranormal encounter? And there are some places that I would put high on the list where I feel there's a good chance you would have a paranormal encounter, perhaps even something, of an apparitional form, where you would have a paranormal experience with some sort of entity. And I think number one on my list would be Myrtle's Plantation. And I've done another show on this prior, but Myrtle's Plantation to me is probably the most haunted place in America. And I feel that there's been a lack of sort of investigation into this place. We've kind of overlooked it for some of these other famous places. But I think that where real research needs to be focused on is at Myrtle's Plantation, because you have so many reports of paranormal experiences and encounters that I think that, that place is probably the most haunted place in the world. And you have to look at it. This place holds, I'm not exactly sure, the location, the energy connected with it, but this place holds, I think, the key to understanding the paranormal. So just to give you a background, the Myrtle's Plantation was built in the 1700s, the 1800s. And it actually at one time was a functional plantation. And it was owned by several owners. There's been many deaths in the home, going back to some of the famous ghosts that are said to haunt the Myrtle's Plantation. The biggest one would probably be Chloe. And Chloe was a slave girl who worked on the plantation. She actually worked inside the house, helped with the family, watched the kids, made dinner, things like that. And she was very in good with the owners of the time. Okay. Now, Chloe was eavesdropping one day on the owner of Myrtle's Plantation, and the owner caught her eavesdropping, and he actually cut off her ear, which is kind of crazy, but back then that's kind of how things were, right? So, and I apologize. It actually, the Myrtle's Plantation was built in the 19th century, 1796, by General David Bradford. Okay, and you have to understand too that the Myrtle's Plantation is over 600 acres. It's this huge property. There's more than just a home. There's the slaves' quarters still there. There's a lake. There's gardens. There's all kinds of structures at this place, and it's over, like I said, 600 acres. It's this huge place, and every place there is probably as much haunted as any other place at the Myrtle's Plantation. But as I said, I was talking about Chloe, right? So Chloe was this slave girl, and she was eavesdropping one day on the owner, and she happened to hear some sort of conversation going on, right, when the owner caught her, and actually chopped off her ear, and she was afraid that she was going to be sent back out into the field, that she could no longer work into the house. So she said, I need to get into, back into a good standing with the owner and his family, so I can stay in the home. So she cooked up this plan that she would basically poison the family, and that she knew what the poison was, so she could cure them and essentially make them better, and then they would be thankful for that, and they would keep her in the home. So the problem is that she put too much poison in their food and actually killed the owner's two daughters and his wife. And then the owner, was upset, and with an angry mob, they hung Chloe there on the property. And Chloe's ghost is often reported around the Myrtles Plantation, looking very sad, often kind of just wandering around aimlessly, as if she's sort of lost. And people have often described what appears to be Chloe as this younger slave girl, has some sort of head covering, a dress. She's been reported in several photos. There's actually very good photographic evidence of Chloe. You can actually see all those online, and I tell you, like, not only is like I said, could you have a paranormal encounter there? I think you could get potential evidence there. There's a lot of good photographic evidence, and a lot of people have seen Chloe. She wanders the grounds, most often seen on the porch or in the front of the home, but that is probably the main ghost that is seen. There's also the two little girls that had died from the poisoning. They're often seen around in a few of the bedrooms, jumping on the beds, tugging at visitors' clothes. There's even a story about the innkeeper who one day she had some guests come, and it was a man and a woman. And when they came in, she said, "Where's your daughter at?" And they said, "What do you mean, daughter?" And they said, "Well, the little girl that was with you outside, that was following along." And they said, "We don't have a daughter. In fact, please don't say anything to my wife, but she just had a miscarriage." And they said, and she said, "Oh, well, I seen a little girl following you along." And that's when she thought that this might be one of the little girls that had died from the poisoning. And it's very interesting, that these little girls have also been caught on photographs. And there's a lot of photographic evidence of these two little girls. And, going back to, even 100 years ago, there's been reports of ghost stories. It's also, reported that Myrtles Plantation is, an Indian burial ground, and it's even been documented that this is an Indian burial ground. There have been natives in the area that have said, yes, this place is built on a Native American burial ground. During the Civil War, house was ransacked by Union soldiers, and there's a legend that claims that there were some people killed during this ransacking. And supposedly there's a blood stain at the doorway roughly the size of a human body that will not come clean. So, and it's even gone on to say that other people said that there's other legends that say the cleaners have been unable to push their mop or broom into that space. There's a mirror that supposedly people look into, and they see the ghost of the woman who was poisoned, the wife who was poisoned, and her name is Sarah, and they say they often see her looking back through the mirror as if she's trapped in the mirror. Also, they're said to be children's handprints are often found on this mirror. There's another man, and I believe his name is William Drew Winter, who was murdered at the home. He was shot on the front porch, staggered and crawled up the stairs, and died on the 17th step. And every night at the same time of his death, people report hearing someone walking up the stairs up to the 17th steps, and then it stops. And this is sort of a type of residual thing that happens every night. And so many people have reported the same encounter over and over again. And I think what can be said about Myrtle's Plantation is that this spot is very much residual haunting. You see a lot of repetitiveness of these spirits that repeat the same thing over and over again, and it's almost as if they're trapped in time, reliving the same moments over and over again. And like I said, with the stairs, with Chloe, with the girls, and the wife, and it's also been reported, that there's been many other deaths, many other spirits that roam there. An innkeeper, as such, has been seen throughout the property. Several people have went inside and said, your innkeeper looked like something was wrong. He looked very troubled. Is everything okay with him? And they said, we don't have an innkeeper working today. And there's been, like I said, so many deaths, so many bad things that have happened on this property, as well as, you have to look that it's on a swamp, connected with water. There's a lot of different factors and variables that play into the hauntings at Myrtle's Plantation, but I can say without a doubt that I believe this is the most haunted place in the world, and that if you wanted to have a paranormal encounter, I would say Myrtle's Plantation would be the place to go. Okay. My second place is a whole entire city. I would say Tombstone, Arizona. The Birdcage Theater, the OK Corral. There's tons of places. Every square inch of Tombstone is haunted, and you can have a paranormal encounter definitely in the whole entire town. Anywhere in the town, you can have some sort of experience, and there's been a lot of photographic evidence as well. A lot of paranormal researchers have said they've gotten their best research and their best evidence at Tombstone. And there's several ghosts connected with the place. Some Wyatt Earp, a lot of famous ghosts that were big in the Wild West. And you see, once again, this is the same area that there's a lot of different minerals. There's a lot of different energies in that area. You have Sedona not too far away, which is this big energy, spiritual place. You see sort of the same pattern of residual type haunting there at Tombstone. And I think that's another place. If you're looking to have a paranormal encounter, I would say go to Tombstone, Arizona. And there's a couple other places that no longer exist, and they've been torn down. There's the Pride House in Spectre, Texas. I believe that was another top place that you could have a paranormal encounter. I mean, the Whaley House, a big one in California. I'm not too sold on the Queen Mary. I'm not too sold on some of these other places like the Lizzie Borden House that have been popularized by these TV shows. I do think the McPike Mansion in Alton, I would say, definitely the Lemp Mansion. The Lemp Mansion I've had the opportunity of visiting. It's a beautiful place, but I definitely feel that is a place where you could have some sort of encounter with the paranormal, because this place has a lot of residual type hauntings as well, and you see a lot of the same repetitiveness, and once again, kind of fits the same pattern as Myrtle's Plantation and Tombstone. Definitely think this is another place where you would have a paranormal encounter. I'll definitely do more on these and give you my top 5 or top 10 places to visit to have a paranormal encounter. But for now, that's all I got. Thank you guys for listening. Parahan, peace out.